Despite the fact that we saw flurries today, and it's supposed to be in the 20s tonight, this is our spring band concert. And we have some really awesome music prepared for you. I don't want to do a ton of talking tonight. There's two main areas that I'd like to talk, now being one of them, to give you sort of the overview. I hope you all snapped the concert program. There's some good information about each of the pieces, but I'd like to explain to you a little bit of the theme that we're going for tonight. It's a really cool process, and I'm hopeful that maybe I'll hear from some of you after the fact and get your feedback as to whether or not it resonated with you. So Yale's Ruler program is a social emotional tool that's out there. Ruler's an acronym that goes from recognizing down to regulating emotion. And on the cover of your concert program, the very first page shows you the mood meter. So there's actually an app out there, online services where you can plot your mood for the day. So if you stop and think for a moment, if you're in the upper left quadrant, you're angry, right? That's the aggressive. If you're in the bottom left, it's sad and down. And if you're bottom right, it's happy but chill and relaxed. And then upper right is joyful, right? It's a high energy and a lot of positivity. So thinking through this program and sort of inside out being the impetus for this, we went after picking one piece for each quadrant for the jazz band and for the concert band. So we're gonna go from red to blue to green to yellow for each one. And so hopefully, and not just the title or the story, but the actual music itself. Does it elicit that emotional feedback? Does our red piece make you feel some anger and aggression? And can we take you through to joyful, okay? And it is not our intention to make you angry or sad based on how we're performing, but rather what we're performing. So hopefully we accomplish that goal tonight. We did this little SEL portion at one of our PD sessions, and Mr. Boyle ran that session and even talked about not just how music elicits emotion, but also can be a tool to help you move away from unwanted emotion. So if you're in the red, we actually built playlists that went from the red through over to the yellow in an attempt to sort of move ourselves emotionally through. So this is a really cool concept for us. I think the pieces hit. I'd love to hear back from people at the end of the night. Did you feel that? And did we pick the right type of stuff to elicit that emotion? Or did you get something different from it? So I'm gonna let each ensemble play through, and we're just gonna let the music talk. We will have a very short break just to get some equipment changed real quick, and we'll go right into concert band. So there's no intermission, and it should be pretty quick hitting. All right, so without further ado, this is the BHS Jazz Band, starting with 2 seconds to midnight. for Riley on alto sax and Nick with your guitar. It was Julia Graybeck on piano and Nick and Josh on guitar. Very difficult to pull off. Riley on alto sax. On the vibraphone. And a round of applause for our BHS jazz bands. Should we give us just a few moments to get a few equipment things in order and our herd of elephants up on stage. Then we will continue along our path with the concert band in just a moment. Thank you very much. All right, I told you there were only 2 spots where I really wanted to do any talking, and now's the second. But we have a number of recognitions that we want to do quickly. This being our last formal band concert, we have a number of events coming our way, but this is the last just band. First and foremost, 2 weekends ago, was it 2 weekends ago? We had a couple of our students who auditioned and made it into All-State. So they could just stand quickly. Riley on alto and Gretchen on percussion. Round of applause for them. Secondly, I would like to take a moment to recognize our seniors, and I'm just going to ask them to stand. If we could just hold our applause to the end. Going through our sections, we have Jonathan Cugno. What day is it today? Okay, so that is every day we get the report of the National Day. If you didn't hear, it was National Empanada Day, so if you didn't have your empanadas today, go home and have them. Jonathan, Nadia, Goulet, Hiram, Sepulveda, those are our clarinets. Riley Webster on sax. Nate DeGiacomi on horn and bassoon tonight. Evan Payon on trumpet. Rory Logan on baritone. Fletcher Steimer on tuba, and Nick Manzi on percussion and guitar this evening. A round of applause for our seniors. So this is my first 4-year cycle since coming back to Berlin, and this was one of the last crews that had to play here at the high school in, believe it or not, the hybrid distancing model that we were in still post-pandemic. So I'm really thankful that that group made it all the way through. It's just incredible what they had gone through. A few thank yous for tonight. First and foremost, our district and building administration. We in the music department are very supported here and are very appreciative of all of their support and help in our process. Mr. Tyler Boyle, not just as our K-12 fine arts supervisor, but more importantly to me here, a really good friend and colleague here at the high school. We work really well together. The choral director, and just always bouncing ideas off, always there to talk with one another, a true legitimate support system. A thank you to all of our BPA members, especially our executive board, for all the work that they pour in throughout the year. We've had a number of large events, anything from the smallest little thing that helps students to the largest events we do in the year. Just a tremendous amount of work, and we could not have the band program we have without those parents. And then finally to all of our families, a real thank you. You know, this day and age, everyone is spread so thin with so many things going on, and I know that at certain times of the year, the band takes a lot of time as well, and we're so appreciative of your work and your support making this program what it is. And we have a really great band here at the high school. These kids have put a lot of work into this concert. Just a couple things, and then we're going to wrap up our concert for the evening. Number one, on the BPA side of things, I just wanted to put a plug in. I don't usually step in to be the voice for the parent group, but we do need more help. And I think the BPA is intimidating because everyone thinks it's this juggernaut of work and it's a lot of time commitment, but it doesn't have to be. And I think we're a little bit in a catch-22 right now where because that's the impression, then people take on a tremendous amount instead of having maybe smaller committees of people that can help with things, and then it's not as daunting of a task. And because of that, we've gotten into this cycle where, you know, the people that come on the board end up having to do all the things, and then they're burnt out after a year, and then we have to replace the whole board again. So we're really looking to expand that a bit and get some help in. So if you're interested, you don't have to make every meeting, you don't have to run a thing, but maybe you can help at one event. Jazz or Pizzazz is coming up, and we need people to step up because that's a really big event, and it's an awesome night, but it's a lot of work. So the more people we have, the easier that is for people to tackle. You don't have to talk to me about that. You can see any of the BPA members, or you can mention to me, hey, I'm willing to help in whatever respect. It can be the smallest thing to you can run something that evening. But we are looking to just expand things and get some help on that end. And then finally, if you look on the last page of your program, that is all of our upcoming events and the band camp dates for our end of summer season, which is almost always like the week prior to Berlin starting with their professional development. So make note of those, and there is an error that I caught well after doing all the work of getting the program out, which is that the car wash is on a Saturday, not a Wednesday, so that date is correct, but it's not on that Wednesday. So unless the administration wants to wash cars during the day as they come through during the school. I didn't think so. All right. So yeah, so that's it. Please take note of all that. There's a lot of important things coming up this year, and then those band camp dates, put them aside. I'll be sending something out specific to that soon. Our last number is a challenge. It really is. You know, I always tell the students that this spring concert for us is our stretch concert. And they've been stretched, both technically and musically, and they've done an outstanding job stepping up to that challenge. This story is interesting. If you haven't read through it, read the whole thing as to why it's called Let Me Be Frank With You. But truly, the composer John Mackey, he was the guy I was looking through thinking, for sure, he's gonna be my red quadrant. He writes dark, aggressive music all the time. And then I'm looking through all this stuff, and it's really hard. And I land on this, and it's super interesting because he felt that he just needed to write something joyful coming out of the pandemic. And so this is our final piece, taking you hopefully into our yellow quadrant and leaving with a little bit of joy. We thank you so much for coming out tonight. Hope you enjoy this last number, Let Me Be Frank With You. Thank you all very much for joining us this evening. We hope you have a safe and somewhat warm night. Thank you all.